Hello and welcome to Business Lily on Trust Television. This is the program where we'll bring you major developments in the street of business, talking about what happens across different sectors of the Nigerian economy, whether it's agriculture, whether it's the oil and gas sector, whether it's the capital market. We got you covered here on Business Daily. I am your host on the program, Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for joining in. First, let's take you through the headlines. Hunger crisis. According to the president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, Nigeria ranks 103 out of 121 countries. And on the international front, India imposes $130 million fine on Google parent company Alphabet. We'll bring more stories on this on the Business Roundup segment of the program. I'll take a short breather, and when I come back, I'll tell you, is it a sea of red or are the arrows green in the stock market? You'll get to find out shortly. Please stay. Welcome back. Now let's give you update from stock market. We are not only going to be looking at Custom Street, of course, the Nigeria Exchange. We go across to other bourses from Africa to other markets across the world. But then again, we begin from Custom Street, talking about what's happening on the Nigeria Exchange. The bulls maintained their grip on the Nigeria Exchange, as we saw, the Nigeria Exchange All Share Index go up by 0.73% at 44,788.14. Now, for activity levels, investors staked a total of 159.21 million shares, valued at 2.73 billion naira, in 2,888 deals on the floor of the Nigerian Exchange. Now, let's move over to see market capitalization ended at 24.21 trillion naira. Now, this is the volume of activity on the Nigeria Exchange. Now, we're seeing a whole lot happening, especially in the industrial goods sector, and that's largely propped up to the bullish close we saw on the local bourse here in the country. Now, investors and traders are also monitoring what's happening, especially with earnings. We are seeing some companies, big corporate that is, releasing audited reports. We saw from United Bank of Africa talking about UBA. All these companies play a very huge role in the stock market as investors and traders are watching and seeing what's happening, talking about the health of the companies and how they are sailing through economic developments that come in from the national front. Now let's go over to other parts of Africa. We begin from the JSE, talking about the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, the largest exchange there is in Africa. Now, it's a positive close for the JSE, up 0.83% to settle at 66,401. Now, domestically in South Africa, attention has been turned to government's mid-term budget schedule. Now, with the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, expected to address critical factors surrounding fiscal and economic sustainability in South Africa. Now, while on the data front, they are looking at the composite data for businesses in South Africa. We are seeing the close here in green. A lot of these markets are open and trading is, of course, going on. For Ghana, up 0.58%, as you can see there, still staying green at 2,461. Now, it's really a battle of economic woes for Ghana. There's inflation on one hand, there's the strength of the Ghanaian cedi, the currency of one hand, and then there are economic managers trying to rescue the Ghanaian economy out of murky waters. Ghana's economic manager trying to secure a facility also from the International Monetary Fund, I beg your pardon. So it has not been a smooth ride thereabout for the Ghanaian economy. Now, it is normally said that the stock market is the barometer that measures how the economy of a nation is faring. So we are seeing this green here, but it's not really a very cool picture looking at the bigger picture for Ghana. Let's go over to Wall Street and see what's happening in the United States. Stock futures fell after disappointing third quarter results from Alphabet, as the parent company of Google, that marked a foreboding start to big tech earnings week. Now, this is the week for the big guys in the tech sector, talking about Amazon, Microsoft, and Alphabet. And the numbers for Alphabet was a little bit disappointing, and we're seeing fines also coming into that situation. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 1.07%. The S&P 500 climbed 1.67%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite up 2.25%. Of course, is a sea of green here in the United States. Markets, of course, are monitoring developments from the global front. Over in Europe, we are seeing markets pulling back slightly with corporate earnings season in full swing and a European Central Bank meeting ahead. The focus for markets in Europe now is basically what are we going to be hearing from Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank and the former managing director of the International Monetary Funds. What cues is going to come out from the meeting? Now, it has been predicted that there's going to be a jumbo interest rate hike for the European Central Bank, and traders and investors and the markets, of course, react to this. Remember, there's an inverse relationship between what we see on the stock market and interest rates. Central bankers across the world have tried use tools within their purview to help rein in on inflation. So for this FTSE 100 in the UK, a marginal drop there, 0.01% at 7,012.46. For the CAC run in France, up marginally equally 0.02%, and for the DAX in Germany up 0.20% at 13,078.74. Now, there was really a lot of focus for the European trade, the EU, talking about the United Kingdom. There's a new Prime Minister on board. Power has changed hands in Downing Street. Rishi Sunak has come in as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he's really saying a lot as to how the situation in the UK can be turned around, especially for the economy. He did mention when he was speaking that he's trying to bring in economic stability and confidence, and that will be at the heart of his administration, and also trying to bring compassion to challenges being faced in the United Kingdom today. We saw the role played by Rishi Sunak during the COVID-19 pandemic in the United Kingdom and how he was able to manage that situation. And that's a backdrop that a lot of economic watchers and a lot of analysts are watching and seeing what will be the policy trend in his administration as Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. Now let's go over to the Asian Strait. In the Asia-Pacific region, markets finished largely higher, 0.67% higher there for the Nikkei 225 in Japan. The Shanghai, 0.78%. And for the South Korea's Kospi, 0.65% higher, 2,249.56. Of course, markets in Asia are they're turning less aggressive, talking about what's happening, especially on the global front. Their markets are looking towards what's happening because there are signs or there are clues that there might be a global recession in sight. So a lot of investors are trying to shrug off these concerns. Going over to the commodities market now, oil prices fell as the dollar firmed and as industry data showing U.S. crude oil stockpile in the U.S. is affecting what's happening with markets. Now, $92.91 per barrel for the international benchmark for crude oil. That's talking about the Brent crude, down 0.61%. Now, there is a summit ongoing in Saudi Arabia. It's called Davos in the desert. Remember, Davos is where world economic leaders come together for the World Economic Forum. Now, Saudi Arabia is bringing business leaders, bringing world economic leaders for Davos in the desert in Saudi Arabia. So we are hearing a lot of news come out from that forum or that summit in Saudi Arabia with regards to the U.S. relationship with the kingdom and what to expect, how that will impact oil prices and impact relations between both countries going forward. For the yellow metal gold, the bullion is up 1.05% at $1,669.75. For silver, $19.67, up 1.73%. For agro commodities, palm oil, wheat, and cocoa, the only red we have on that sheet there is for cocoa now, down 1.7%. 5%. Remember, Ghana is the second largest producer of cocoa in the world. Wheat is up 0.69% and palm oil is up 0.12%. Now, most times people will tell you, take a look at the relationship here on this chart. Now, oil seems to be the mainstay for the Nigerian economy, and we have the agro-commodities here doing way more in terms of prices. How many 92s will come into $4,000? So that means, where should the focus be? Economic diversification has been brought to the front burner, especially for the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration. How much do we need to harness the potential in the agricultural sector? And this chart says a lot in terms of what needs to be done. Now, that will be our focal point for the program today. How can we harness potentials in the agricultural sector to benefit the Nigerian economy? Talking about agribusiness, wealth creation, job creation in the agricultural sector. Those are the numbers we have for you today. We have successfully crunched some of these numbers, and trust us on the program, as it is our tradition, to bring you more updates from the stock market. I'll take a short break. When we return, it'll be time for Business Roundup. Please stay. Welcome back. Now let's take you through a roundup of business stories making the news in the economy. Take a listen.
President of the African Development Bank, AFDB, Akinwumi Adesina, says Nigeria occupies the 103rd position among 121 countries said to be facing hunger crisis. He stated this at the launch of the special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria in Abuja. Although he said Africa faces huge challenges in meeting its food needs with 283 million people that go hungry annually. He, however, noted that Africa has massive agricultural potential, with 65% of the uncultivated arable land left to feed over 9 billion people in the world by 2050 being in Africa. And away in India, competitions watchdog has imposed a fine of 9.36 billion rupees, an equivalent of 113.4 billion US dollars, on Google parent company Alphabet. The country's competition commission accused Google of abusing the dominant role of the Google Play Store by forcing app developers there to use Google's payment system for app purchases and purchases within apps. The Competition Commission also ordered the company to allow app developers to use any payment system. The Commission had earlier fined Alphabet the equivalent of $164 million for allegedly abusing the dominant role of its Android operating system to boost its main business of online searches. Google and other Silicon Valley firms are vying for market share in India, soon to be officially the world's most populous country.
Those are the stories we have for you for our Business Roundup. Now, up next is our conversation for the day. Like I mentioned earlier, the focal point for the program today will be harnessing the potentials in Nigeria's agricultural sector. So many potentials in Nigeria's agricultural value chain. How do farmers, how do Nigerians benefit from that sector? Beyond seeing agriculture as just a way of life, how can the agribusiness ideology be entrenched in the country, across farmers, across citizens in the country? Also, how can technology be harnessed? The world is evolving dynamically. How can farmers and those across the agri-value chain also benefit from it? Also, the special agro-industrial processing zone that was launched by the African Development Bank, with development partners coming in, development finance partners coming in with a pool of funds to help develop the agricultural sector, help create wealth, help create jobs in the country. Some of these issues we will be looking at critically on the program today. I'll take a short break. When I return, you get to meet my guest for the discussion today, and it promises to be very insightful and educative. You do not want to miss out on that. We'll be back shortly.
This is the road leading up to the Lokoja Bridge from Abuja, and as you can see, tankers carrying fuel, trucks carrying livestock, perishables, and commuters trying to make their way from point A to point B have all been slowed down as a result of the flooding going on in Lokoja.
As I tell you, so my house is inside water like this.
is my house. Big Music is my house.
We have no option than to come here and look for what we chop.
This water have really spoiled many things. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm not in my own house.
I want to encourage them and assure them that their government, the governor they elected had come to see them, and government officials have been going there to see them. They are not in this alone. We are with them.
Rewa kamar ta saka mai wuya ya zo ya haɗe su kap.
This is not the first time it's happening. It has happened before, but this time around, like I said, the intensity and the volume of water that has come has done more damage than even the past.
No food, no clothing, and no shelter. Until tomorrow, every year, there is a budget line for Dasin House Dam. Every year, because I've seen it and I know it. But till tomorrow, nothing has been done about it.
So the Nigerian factor certainly is one of the reasons why communities like this have to suffer.
Ba wani rayuwar da za mu sake yi mu ji daɗi kuma.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
That's great.
Welcome back, and thank you for still staying there with us on the program. If you're just tuning into the program, this is Business Daily coming to you from Trust Television. Now, let's quickly take you through the special agro-industrial processing zone that was launched recently that is expected to help deepen wealth creation, job creation, and also deepen agribusiness in Nigeria, basically helping Nigeria build a secure food scope in the country. Take a listen.
The first phase of the program will commence in 8 locations across the country, namely Kano, Imo, Kaduna, Cross River, Kwara, Oyo, Ogun, and the FCT. Nigeria's fragile economy has had to deal with high rates of inflation brought on by the lingering effects of COVID-19, insecurity, flooding, and global inflationary pressures, which have been exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine war, worsening Nigeria's food insecurity.
To help member countries cope with this new challenge, the bank approved in last July, a food security response program worth $10.5 billion. Nigeria will be among the first countries to benefit from this program. The Islamic Development Bank Regional Hub of Abuja team is working on the second phase of the National Program for Food Security project to be approved before the end of this year for an estimated $30 million.
I am also delighted to announce today a special new significant contribution by IFAD for Nigeria in response to the flooding. This is a grant funding of almost $5 million to be invested in climate-resilient agriculture.
Nigeria's agricultural sector is the second largest contributor to the country's GDP, and with about 34 million hectares of arable land, the potentials for the sector are endless.
The program was recently approved by the Federal Executive Council. It is a major cross-cutting value chain investment effort driven by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in alignment with the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy of the federal government to incentivize agro-industrialization for private sector development. So specifically, the SAPZ program, or SAPZ program, is designed to develop multiple clusters of agricultural transformation centers, or ATCs, and agro-industrial hubs, AIHs, within major clusters of high agricultural production.
There you have it, the SAPZ, talking about deepening agriculture sector in Nigeria. I have my guest with me now in the studio. He is Professor Banji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank. Welcome to the program, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you, Christiana.
Prof, that report now just give us a background of what to expect for the SAPZ. I want you to further speak to how these agro-processing zone will help unlock the potentials for Nigeria's agricultural value chain.
No, thank you very much. The SAPZ brings together all manner of actors within the geographic space to process commodities. One of the biggest issues we have as Africans is low productivity, low skills of smallholder farmers. So we are building the SAPZ as a sort of a twin hub. As you hear from that explanation by the Vice President, we are going to have within those communities who are producing crops of different kinds, cassava, sesame, whatever they are producing. Adjoining to those communities will be the factory hubs where these things are processed. But within those communities also, we are going to have what we call Agric transformation centers, where we provide them with dryers, storage, cold store, and all of that to ensure that we reduce to the barest minimum post-harvest losses.
Prof, now I know that there's a pool of funding, especially for the SAPZ. I understand that the AFDB is providing $210 million, the Islamic Development Bank providing at about $150 million, and other development finance institutions. I'm interested to know how these will make an impact, because I know there's a partnership with state governments to help this development, because I'm particular about the smallholder farmers, like you have mentioned, because most times we hear pool of funds being being brandished around. But how do we expect, is there an M&E process in place to ensure that the farmers eventually benefit from this?
No, thank you. So what I described to you, the twin sort of arrangement structures, ATCs and the hubs.
Yes.
What this money is going to do is to help build infrastructure across those communities. Power, water, drainage, sewage, and all of that, so that investors can come in, anchor investors, factory owners, farmers can come in and invest without having to trouble themselves about power and all of that, so that they can also compete with their global partners. But you asked specifically about smallholders.
Yes.
We want to graduate smallholders into big holders. You know, all our comparator countries have left us behind. That's the truth. When you look back 30, 40 years, countries we were together in the same position have moved on. And they have now grown their so-called rural areas into modern farming communities. So one of the things that SAPC is going to do is that in the next 10 years, we are looking forward to a position where Nigeria is no more talked about as a dual structural economy, where those we call smallholders today, poor, low skill, low level education, will have been transformed. We are seeking to engage and to effect what we call a structural transformation of our economies. As a country, we are in that phase now, but that doesn't mean we should remain there. So the smallholder farmers, yes, we are going to organize them, give them training, give them skills, give them improved seeds, give them all manner of things that will make modern agriculture possible.
Yes.
But our goal over the next 10 years is that we begin to see a change, a transformation of those areas. And that is why actually the SAPC is deliberately located within this, what we call peri-urban areas, places where you have the most poverty, all of this insecurity, no school, no hospitals, no infrastructure. The SAPC is to induce that transformation. Usually special economic zones are built near airports or ports, but this is a deliberate effort. And this is seeking a fundamental change in the way development economics is arranged. So this is our hope. And because this is going to be driven by private sector, it's going to be 90% driven by private sector. We have no doubt that we will not be troubled by all the usual bureaucratic
bottlenecks,
challenges that we usually have.
Prof, just as my last question, now when I was reading through this speech, I was reading through the speech of the president of the AFDB, and he spoke about how we can make agri-business, entrench it basically in the country. I want you to speak to that, because beyond agriculture just seen as a way of life, taking my hoe, going to toil the ground, how can those in the value chain begin to benefit from the business of agriculture? In 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, this is really what I describe as structural transformation. Agriculture is a business. It is the biggest sector in the world, $8.1 trillion.
Yes.
By the way, IT is about $1 trillion. Iron and steel, they are below $1 trillion. Agribusiness is a business. That's what Dr. Additional persistently is saying. All of the big companies you see, Nescafe, Lever Brothers, all of those, Cargill, these are in the agribusiness. And by 2030, Africa's agribusiness will be $1 trillion. It is a big business.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you. There we have Professor Banji speaking. Banji Oyelaron Oyeyinka. He is the Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the Africa Development Bank. Thank you for giving us time to come on the program, Prof.
Thank you, Christiana.
And that's where we wrap up the program today. Thank you also for investing your time with us on the program. You can catch up on all. If you have missed anything, catch up on our social media platform for updates in the news and, of course, updates from the business world. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for watching and continue to stay safe.